Hi everyone, welcome to Navigating. Here at Navigating, we explore how people from all walks of life are finding their way through today's complex and changing world. My guest for this episode is an incredible artist who has watched the world change and evolve for many decades. And as she's watched, she's become very active politically, always aiming for social justice and equality. Debra Walker, thank you for being my guest today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me.
My goodness, I know you because of Facebook. We've
Yes.
never met in person before today, but I started looking at your paintings. Here's one of your paintings now. Debra paints the most amazing work of art that shows San Francisco at its best. You've been in San Francisco for a long, long time, right?
1981, and
Yeah.
I came here to paint.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, I spent the first part of my life in publishing, like LA Times, Riverside Press Enterprise, and then went to the record companies doing design on albums,
Oh,
and
nice.
then advertising. And as I was approaching 30, which at the time seemed old, now it's so young.
Now we laugh to
Now
ourselves
we laugh.
about that.
I visited San Francisco and knew immediately this is where I needed to come, and this is where I needed to come to paint.
And was that because you felt what a creative hub it was, or what was the
beauty of it,
yeah.
just the beauty. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
Everybody walking around San Francisco,
Yeah.
you just all of a sudden you look
Yeah.
up and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And so I want to do that. I do urban landscapes. I really want to, sort of reflect what it's like living in these days. And when I came here, it was perfect because it's politically, aesthetically, it's exactly where I need to be.
I guess the big draw for you was that it felt like the city of San Francisco just matched who you were at the time. And what I just have to say right away, because your painting is showing here to the audience, there's just a way. What's the medium that you use generally, or does it change?
Oil and
Oil?
mixed media,
Yeah.
charcoal on
Yeah.
canvas, and
It just always feels impressionistic, and it always feels like the city is just kind of melting into itself in this beautiful way. And so I've really loved it. So let's start more at the beginning with you, though. And you went to, when did you first decide you liked art and wanted to be an artist?
it's interesting. I lived in Nebraska. I grew up in a really small farm town in the Midwest, and I think I had issues as a kid. Maybe we all do, but my parents, thankfully, really noticed that art calmed me down, that art was good for me, that I could actually sort of be present and do that work. And they hired somebody to teach me oil painting when I was like 8, 9 years old. And so that's important because it validated what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I always came at my art in a way that it took it seriously. It was meaningful to me, and it does save me. I mean, I had a challenging upbringing, coming out of high school and into college in the Summer of Love era. I struggled. And I think that the reason that I made it through was really that art was there for me to process.
Well, I have to go back to your parents for just a moment and how affirming that is. Do you
Absolutely.
know how it's very rare for parents to not think, oh, she needs to go to college and get a degree in business and make a lot of money. When a child says, I want to be an artist, I want to be a musician, they're generally discouraged. So there's something about that made you believe that it was an actual thing.
Yeah,
that was
absolutely.
worthy. So that's great.
I had this great teacher, Mrs. Dodendorf, a German woman, and took me seriously teaching. I mean, she wasn't discounting at all.
Yeah.
She would correct me and tell me why, I had to mix certain colors to get a certain effect. And then I was also able, even in a farm town where, quite frankly, they weren't necessarily uplifting of the arts, the 4-H clubs and the county fairs had art shows, and so you could exhibit and get validated in sort of what you were doing. I had a show, my dad moved back to the Midwest in his later years, and I went to visit often. And one of the visits I had arranged to do a show in Omaha, and also in Columbus, where I'm from, and it was in the basement of the library or something like that. I mean, and all of my relatives from, even smaller rural farms came, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we didn't realize that you could actually do art and make a living." And
that's what's so interesting.
yeah.
So, as I was reflecting when I was first thinking about what I was going to talk to you about, one of the primary things was you've been an artist all these years and you've
Yes.
supported yourself
Yep.
as an artist, and how unusual that is.
Yeah.
So this is telling me and our audience something about, encourage kids and they'll do what they want to do, and then they can make a living at it. That's
Absolutely.
really
And,
interesting.
I feel like my love is painting, but it leads, if you reinforce that in yourself, you look at things differently, you figure out how to make something work that doesn't feel like it's working. Those are significant things that happen in the brain. And whether you're doing it to reflect an image visually,
Right.
or if you're working on political issues and how to
Yeah.
solve problems that are, really problematic, you have to look at things differently.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking as you started to talk about solving those problems
Yeah.
in art, you've had to solve a lot of problems. So we move on to where you came to San Francisco,
Yes.
and you began working in commissions in
Yes.
San Francisco. And in commissions, you have to get along with the other people on the commission board or whatever, and you have to be able to, all of you look at, okay, we have this problem over here. What are we going to do to solve this problem? So you've got this already working in your mind because you've been solving these art issues for such a long time.
It's so interesting. I mean, I always say you never know where it's going to go when you're out there, especially doing artwork.
Right.
You don't know. My goal is to do the art, is to be in the process of it. And especially in San Francisco, a lot of what I do is I'm out and walking through the city and seeing these breathtaking things and seeing things that move me.
Yeah.
And I sketch it, and I'm like, why is this moving me? How do I reflect that in my painting?
So that's
And-
great. You
and
asked
don't-
that question of
Yeah.
yourself, too.
But also, you don't know how it's going to sink in, because
Right.
doing that, I started going, that says artist building. Is it really a live, work, loft for artists? And then I would go look, and it's like, not really. I mean, who can afford $1 million studio? Not many artists I know.
Right.
And so it started making me think about land use issues.
Yeah.
And who was being affected and
Yeah.
actually displaced using arts space as a excuse, as it were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's how I got into sort of
Politics?
the local politics,
Yeah.
is because that's, zoning issues and planning issues. That's pretty nerdy.
Was that the first thing you noticed as you came to San Francisco and you were painting and making money at that point with what were you getting commission pieces?
I was showing at a gallery. I came here, and the first job I had was actually working at a gallery on Fisherman's Wharf, selling art. And one of my co-sellers ended up opening his own gallery, and he wanted me to show my work at his gallery. So that was downtown George Krefsky Gallery, which was around for 20, 30 years. So I showed there for decades, doing a show every couple of years here, and a show in, I'd do shows in Pennsylvania, New York, and different places. And you sell work and make a living. So I was really lucky, that happened. I think that it's really difficult. But San Francisco, I live in an artist building. I was lucky enough to sublet in a building. It's a cooperative run by artists, all of us.
In San Francisco?
In San Francisco. It's over in the North Mission area, called Developing Environments. It's been around since 72.
Was that Artaud at some point?
Artaud is right across the street from us.
Okay,
So
'cause
we
I-
started right at the same time.
I knew the project Artaud. Yeah.
Yeah, those were started in the 70s, early 70s.
Affordable when they
Yeah,
when things
well,
were
Artaud bought their building.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they got a lot of city help.
Yeah.
We actually have successive long-term leases. We're working towards hopefully buying our building at some point. But it's a really good relationship with the landlord. So we run the top two floors as live and workspace for artists. And it's cheap.
And that's what works,
Yeah.
as opposed to those, what you're
Lofts,
talking
yeah.
about, the lofts that
Yeah.
are, the developers come in and then they say, you can live
I'm not
and
going to
work.
paint our marble floors.
You can live and work in this space. Yeah. It's too much.
So this
for-
really is, and
Yeah.
it's that's why all of us in the building. I mean, we've had in my building Kehinde Wiley, who did the Smithsonian portrait of Obama,
Yeah.
and Pamela Z, an amazing sound artist. Ron Chase, who for years designed the sets for the opera. John Chiara, an amazing photographer. I mean, everybody. Moshe Cohen, who started the Clowns Without Borders.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
go into war zones
Yeah.
and take clown shows to the kids who are being affected by all of it.
It's really interesting. You know,
Yeah.
when you think about it, it's like, once again, the people who do the work, or the people who are in an area, I'm going to see if I can describe what it is I'm thinking about, because it ties into the politics too.
Yeah.
It's the people who know what they need. It's not somebody from the outside.
Yeah.
And that's true. You've been on the Arts Commission and the Police Commission.
Yes.
And how long were you on the Police Commission?
I was on the police commission about 2.5 years, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I went on to, I went from the building commission to the arts commission right before COVID hit.
Okay.
And I'm really grateful because I was able to input a lot to pivot some of our arts funding and program is to really take advantage of the arts community and the effect they have. And they really helped us as a city
Right.
get through COVID.
Yeah.
With all of the murals on empty buildings, with performances and art in open spaces. I mean, there's a lot that we did that while I was on the Arts Commission, and it just was really a good timing for me to be there because I live as an artist, so I sort of knew
Yes.
sort of where we could focus some money and really help our arts community recover and help us recover.
Help
and
everyone
then
express
the
themselves.
police commission, the mayor asked me to shift over 2.5 years ago. I think about in 2022.
London Breed.
London Breed,
Mayor
yes.
London Breed.
She asked me to switch, and I resisted at first because I so loved being on the Arts Commission. But it's really the issues at that time were really important. I mean, the safety on our streets was
Right.
challenging.
Black Lives Matter had been.
Black Lives Matter. So we had this really strong need to reform our system at the same time as we were experiencing a lot of issues on the street.
Yeah.
So it was, I said, absolutely, I'll be there. I'll do whatever I can. And, I feel like, again, having people who live the experience on the streets, talking about what's happening on our streets is really important.
And that's what that's the tie-in that I was making, that the artists that are so successful living in these buildings that you're talking about, one of the reasons they get to be so successful is that their overhead isn't astronomical.
Absolutely.
And they're able to get up in the morning and do the art that they want.
And not have to work 20 jobs, maybe just two or three. Because it does take time. I mean, one of the things that's true is that as I've gotten into politics, I have a lot more unfinished paintings because it really, they're both very demanding of attention and time.
Yeah.
And so, it's my goal to kind of shift back over and finish some of those paintings in the next few years.
Well, back to the police commission. So what was the mayor's reasoning? Why did she tell you she thought you should be on the police commission? Did she have a
She
thought
feels that I work to bring people together,
Yeah.
that I have done some of the similar stuff that needs to happen at the police department and public safety at the the building department with land use and building issues and the tension between landlords and tenants. I mean, we have tension that gets in the way of solutions, and so I'm a strong supporter of reforms, but I also have issues with what was happening around street safety. Our crime was up, deaths from addiction was up. We weren't successful at alternatives to policing, and we really needed to get our act together more right at the front line of those things. So
That was something I really wanted to talk about with you too, is the idea of community policing.
Yes.
And how it really makes a difference if. Why don't you define community policing for us first? Okay.
Well, it's fascinating because you have, some part of this sort of just the immediate response to policing is, that authority is the problem. I mean, there's a lot of people who feel that way. People in challenged neighborhoods and
right.
Who have lived and struggled, feel that there is some oppression coming from law enforcement. So, and there is a lot wrong with our policing. Just like every system that we have, we need reforms badly to make things equitable, so that it is a level playing field.
Right.
So that people who are innocent don't get harassed. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that we really need to check ourselves. And quite frankly, the city has committed to doing that maybe 10 years ago and have been, but we needed to, then we had COVID and there was a lot of pressure to defund the police and, being able to reform at the same time as keeping streets safe, it's challenging, and we really need.
You have to find middle ground with a lot of these things, just like what you're
Yeah.
saying between the landlords and the tenants.
Absolutely.
It's like, and this is what we see in general.
Yes.
You start with this kernel, which is like small local issues,
Absolutely.
and it goes on and on and on out into these bigger.
Absolutely. It all happens locally, and it's, I have said it a lot that, we end up being yes, no, instead of really getting down to how do we solve this?
Exactly, and given the situations that we're in now,
Absolutely.
we'll get to that in a minute. Let's stick with San Francisco
Yes.
for a little bit,
Yes.
but yeah, it goes all the way to global situations
Yeah.
that we have to get past yes, no.
But I feel like this mayor and likely the next mayor are committed to really getting into this century better policing strategies.
Yeah.
I found being on the commission, almost everyone in San Francisco agrees with that.
Yeah.
So, it just, that's where I tried to approach that position, that commission position. We do need to come together around this, because if we continue to just fight yes, no, we're going to lose support for reform. So there's no point in this.
Right.
We really need to come together with solutions.
Yeah. So community policing really involves outreach into the community, but again, asking, what do you need?
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yes.
What would work for you?
And each community is different,
Right.
and I do feel it's hiring folks from the community.
Right.
The department is committed to 30-30, which is by 2030, we're going to hire 30% women. We need more women on the force. We need more officers from communities of color.
Right.
We're doing really well with that. But we also need to have alternatives. We need to have our departments who work on mental health issues and addiction issues have some sort of authority to make people get treatment,
Get
for
help.
instance. Yeah, I feel like that's missing in the equation. It shouldn't be the cops doing it.
Yeah.
It really does need to be health officers, and we've got some street officers now. The fire department has a street response, and again, in many cases, they're coming in with a more strict edict of, you can't stay here.
Right.
So your choice is you're either going to, be in a violation of a law and go through that process, or you're going to go get housing, get treatment, get help.
And it seems like training in compassion is
Absolutely.
really, really important. And I don't know where San Francisco is at with that these days, but that seems so important. One of the things that I've seen, I grew up in Oakland, where policing was really an issue.
Yeah, it still is.
Still is. And I always felt like there was the police. My dad was a criminal attorney, so I got to know a whole bunch of the police officers, and they really had an us and them viewpoint. And even as a child, I thought, this doesn't work. This doesn't work for them to see themselves as separate, different, and in charge, without really finding out what's going on with these people and calling them or calling them worse than them in the case of, racism.
That's right.
So, I think that is San Francisco thinking about that more, bringing more
Absolutely.
compassion
Yes.
training and more understanding?
I watched a lot of the trainings. I went to a lot of the trainings that happened in San Francisco, and the de-escalation part is truly about that because it requires the officer to figure out where the person is.
Yeah.
That's compassion.
See, that's it.
Compassion.
That's it. If I found you lying on the ground, I
Yes.
wouldn't think, we got to arrest her. I mean, we have to find out, okay, what's going on?
Absolutely.
What's happened with you?
And we went, I've done a lot of ride-ons, especially in the Tenderloin. And, I would say, I'm going to stop over here, see what's going on. And even the issues that were, there's a lot of drug use on the street. So, but it's talking to the women out there who, they want to talk to women. I mean, even one of the officers I was with said, gosh, you were good at getting that person. It's like sometimes just being a woman helps because she, she was clearly struggling. And do you have a place to live? Yes, I have a place to live, but, my partner beats me up. And I'm like, well, let's find a place where you don't get that, where you're willing to, And then, unfortunately at the time it would take too long for someone to come and pick her up to take her someplace. That's where we need, that's the being
piece,
out there.
Yeah, that's the piece.
Yeah.
It's the bureaucracies at all levels, not just with police, but we've had conversations about, other bureaucratic processes that they just take too long.
And that's part of what I do have. I'm good at that, of like going, how come this isn't working?
Yes.
And I feel like it's one of the reasons behind all of this discussion about like commissions in general. I mean, I've been on commissions, so how can I not support commissions? But, we have too many. There's too many commissions. There's too much bureaucracy. And we don't stop and evaluate what we're doing. Yeah. It may well have worked really well at one point, and now maybe let's do it instead of talking about it.
Make a shortcut. Yeah. I was just reading today about to be certified as an organic farming inspector, they need 2,000 hours first of work.
Yeah.
Well, now why 2,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people learn pretty fast. It's like, okay, you haven't been using pesticides since when? You know, whatever. So that means that there's just not enough organic farming inspectors, so there's not enough organic farming. It's like it just gets really bogged down.
Right, and it's the same. I mean, you look at. I mean, this is something that I actually had talked about with Vice President Harris before she was vice president. Because California was looking at legalizing cannabis.
Right.
And so we have a system, instead of, like I said, you guys should do it instead of letting somebody else do it. You know, somebody in the Attorney General's office should actually make it like ABC, who regulates alcohol. But now we have one whole department that does the growing part, and another department that does the packaging part, which is full of like plastics and all of that stuff. And then you have another, and the bureaucracy is killing the industry, literally. And
these departments don't speak to one another.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Precisely.
That continues.
And that's the frustration people have. So now this is the part the government doesn't work, is that now we just use it as a campaign tool. Let's get rid of commissions. Let's keep commissions. Let's every year for the next 8 years instead of doing it. And so,
all the talking.
Well, it's we have right now a failure of government versus politics.
Right.
Of governing versus getting there. Right. And, I feel like we need to look at it locally. I think that's something that the mayor is doing, even as she's leaving the process with Supervisor Mandelman, to actually review this process of who's advising who makes decisions. We need a leadership.
Leadership and a hierarchy that isn't too dense.
Cumbersome.
Yeah.
It allows for public input, but not like endlessly. And we have 5 different commissions that deal with homelessness.
Well, that's why there's so much homelessness.
That's right. Well, that's why it's not. That's why our system doesn't work.
It's not funny. I don't mean to laugh.
But it's
you just see then they need to get permission from this to do that, to do
Yes,
this,
and
to
everybody
do
has a
that.
different agenda.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
it depends on who's on the, it's really, it's a frustrating time for people politically because this is why people vote in ways that seem crazy to me.
Right.
Is
right.
because we're failing at delivering.
Whatever is here is failing, so let's find something completely different, whether it's really going to make any more sense or not. So in San Francisco, you've been there a long time. What do you see? How do you see the city has changed? And I guess the big question really is, San Francisco gets such an incredibly bad rap as the worst city in the country. So much crime, so much this, so much that. And of course, that's a lot of, sensationalizing from a certain kind of news outlet. So, and then people believe it,
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, there's the issue of journalism in general today and the lack of sort of commitment to truth, which makes it difficult. I think San Francisco, as I came here and was inspired as an artist to be here because of what it offers, both the aesthetic and the cultural and political soul it has, so are other industries, not just arts, but technology, for instance. It's not surprising to me that technology bubbles here.
Flourished
here. .com. We have the whole internet phase, and now we're in the AI phase. And I feel like it's in the neighborhood I live in always.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with some of the companies that got bought by Apple to do their augmented reality so that you can do QR codes. And they all are like little startups that are in our neighborhoods. So I feel like one of the things San Francisco is good at is being able to adapt. I mean, it's challenging and not without controversy, land use issues, but the manufacturing of when the buildings were built in my neighborhood was food processing, right? And now it's AI. And so the buildings
as history changes.
The manufacturing is different.
Yeah.
And we adapt. Even as we fight about it and talk about it and do endless task forces about it, we do adapt and we attract businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, Twitter was here, Elon, just saying, even though, they don't necessarily like having, to get community input on their business stuff. I mean, the world needs to be able to weigh in on where we're going as a race. And I feel like San Francisco's probably one of the more sort of advanced cities around that process. For good and bad.
Public input and all.
Yeah, good and bad. I mean, I think we need to be more effective at delivery. And I also think that the issues about wealth inequity.
Right.
And, I mean, in the last decades, all the money's going to the people who already have it.
Yeah. Well, it started when Ronald Reagan said government is the problem.
Yep.
And everything began to be privatized and not controlled. And you've actually written about how when government let go of control of what was going to be developed and how it was going to be developed, it just went way out of control.
Well, especially with technology.
Yeah, that's what you've talked
about. Because I mean, when I got on the building commission, all the record keeping was in manila folders, and that wasn't that long ago. I'm just saying that the technology, just in coordinating with the city, it's impossible. It's for some reason. I mean, even businesses have a hard time upgrading into the new systems and all that stuff, but government has a real problem, and it's
that's
just
because it's so complicated, right?
It's
like
complicated. Also, we have elections every 4 years. We have elections every 2 years for assembly. So the politics get in the way of governing. And so I don't know what the answer to that is, a stronger city administrator versus a stronger mayor maybe, but I feel like...
for continuity.
If we have... So we have planning department, building department, treasurer, assessor, they all deal with built property in San Francisco. Each of them has their own database. They're not connected. So that's just for starters.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most contentious issues. So we end up fighting about should we build things or should we not build things. It's never about how do we make things more effective.
How do we build things and make it work for everybody?
It's
Yeah.
So it's
again,
really,
it's that middle ground you're talking about.
And then when you have 130 different commissions, then it just never gets resolved. And I mean, I keep saying, people call me, will you be on this task force? I said, not one more task force, not one more. We already know what we need to do. We just have to do it.
That's so interesting. And this is government in general.
I think it is. Not.
But
just
I guess
here.
I want to go back to the other question about San Francisco and how you feel about the way the outside world views San Francisco. It's kind of interesting because you're saying the picture you're painting, but the picture you've painted of this beautiful environment that clearly magnetizes all kinds of creativity. So these tech people, these are creatives also in their own way. They may be a little nerdier than she with the paintbrush. But at what point do you think San Francisco, do you think are people jealous of San Francisco?
I think people are, but we also fail at things.
Yeah,
I mean, we've failed at getting people homes.
So that's
getting people off the street.
We failed issue.
The homeless issue and everything sort of connected with it. Things, addiction, mental health issues.
Yeah.
I mean, we really need solutions for those things. Otherwise, it's going to continue to live on our streets. And it's difficult because we do have a population that is very active politically. So I remember even in my area, which is manufacturing and seems like it would have been perfect, they wanted to put an alcohol recovery place in the next block. And some of my neighbors were like, no. And I'm like,
So how is it going to...
Exactly. I mean, but it's the same thing that even when we talk about tiny house communities, having some in each neighborhood, because we aren't necessarily as good at managing those kind of things. People don't want them. And so I think we really do, as a city, have to focus intensely on doing better at implementing solutions. We talk a lot about them.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time writing and editing legislation, and then we don't enforce it. And we don't take an account of how well it's working.
Right.
And so, we need to be able to do that better. And I feel like, because that's, and it's done. I mean, we fail in the name of compassion in many ways.
Yeah.
That we
what does
just
that
have,
mean? Exactly.
Meaning, people are on the street. They don't necessarily want to be there, but they don't have a choice, so let them be.
Right. So here's a question, because, and I don't know if this is a conspiracy theory or not, but, people talk about how in the Midwest and on the East Coast where it's freezing, they're putting people on buses and shipping them to California because the weather here isn't going to kill them in the winter necessarily. True.
I think it is true that people come here. I don't know if it's because of the weather or because they don't have solutions themselves. Big cities do have a lot more issues with homeless because there are more people.
But probably not Omaha or Columbus.
They have different policies. They're not as tolerant as we are.
So maybe the tolerance is part of the draw, not just the good weather.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just for like sanctuary city. I mean, we're a tolerant city.
Yeah.
We want to be able to include everybody.
It's so interesting because on one hand, when you say sanctuary city, I feel, well, that sounds good. Yeah. And then I think, boy, that sounds like it could get really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's both things, isn't it?
It's both things. And I feel like there needs to be solutions.
Yeah.
Not doing anything does not solve the problem, and it makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so I think cities need to take responsibility for it, but I think that the rest of the world needs to acknowledge that there needs to be support. We need financial support to create housing for homeless folks. We need neighbors to actually allow for mental health treatment centers, residential programs in their neighborhood, and participate in making sure those things succeed. And it's challenging.
Yeah. And we need more than just Melinda Gates of the billionaires to
Well, that's a big deal right now because I think the tech sector in general has been less philanthropic.
I agree, and that's what I've seen. And
Yep.
and it's like, well, okay, so you have these $1 billion, and we've been told since 1980 that trickle down economics is going to work. So could you help with the trickling? Can you try to get
They're
some?
putting it in the pocket. And I also, I mean, that the whole concept is that taxes are supposed to pay for those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the more you make, the more you pay.
Yeah, and they found all those
right.
loopholes and.
But now they can give money to avoid taxes, so they can be more specific about where they go.
Right.
And there are some in tech who are good at really supporting projects. They're usually pet projects that the folks like, which is better than nothing. But it doesn't give government the
Everything
big
they need.
picture
Yeah.
ability to
Yeah.
fund bigger programs that need to work
Yeah.
in general rather than just specific things. And I think that we do really need to do better at delivering services and making sure that we're getting what we need from the nonprofits that we work with. I mean, I feel like to your issue of community input, part of it is that we work with community organizations. We work with nonprofits who are in the communities to deliver the services. Sometimes we're not very good at auditing the results, and we need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
In order to continue.
Well, and moving from local to national with these issues, and I know you've been really active. You know Kamala Harris quite well.
Yeah.
And you have seen what's happened through the election cycles these last 20 years or whatever we're gonna go to. Put you in the hot seat here. What are the Democrats missing? What have they missed here?
I was sharing earlier about I was trying to explain to a reporter about zoning and planning issues, and the response was, you need to put that in one sentence. And there's some part we go on and on. I probably am guilty of it right here of just being too intellectual, and I'm not bashing education or intellect or anything, but when we get down in the details of stuff, it's hard when you have opposition that just says, make America great again.
And it's such a simple concept, and people can put it on their hat.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel good. It's like it makes them feel good because they can get their mind around it really quickly.
Yeah.
Even if they really don't know what it means. And
even if they're not basing it on true experience they're having, they're just, I'm pissed off. People are upset. I mean, we've gone through a lot, and a lot of people have been struggling. And I think that we tend to not want to blame people from it. We do want to make it different and find solutions. I think that's my experience of the Democratic Party, is that there's at least, they want to try and do that. That's cumbersome in this day and age when, it's clickbait and you can find an answer on Twitter.
And it has to be, has to be simplified. No, this is what we were talking about.
And I don't know exactly. I mean, I think being accountable for what we're doing and realizing when we're making mistakes, that's important. Yeah. And I think we don't do that. We really don't do that enough. And when we're responsible for delivering the services, we're going to get blamed.
Right.
That's just bottom line.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
No, it's, I find myself at a loss for words. It's like, well, what do we do? We've seen this happen a lot, and I don't feel that the lesson is being learned necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, when we were talking earlier, I was saying that, one of the things I loved about Winston Churchill was that he said, always use simple language that anybody in the country can understand. Don't, even if there's a bigger word to say something, try to find something really simple to take its place so everybody understands. And I feel like the Democrats, I don't think they've realized until maybe this last election result, I don't think they realized just how far they had come from being able to reach so many average and I don't like the term average Americans either, but people who are just living lives that, where their lives are more simple, their communities are simple, and it goes back to go to the community and find out what they
Yes.
need. Don't go and tell them what you want to give them.
Yeah.
Ask what they need.
So I was the issue last year where a gallery owner in North Beach ended up squirting a homeless person.
Oh, yeah.
It was in the news here
Yeah.
a lot. Horrible when you looked at it. I mean, it was someone who has routinely been bothering people on the streets,
Yeah.
being aggressively sort of irritating, if not harassing of people. Nonetheless, if we don't do things as leaders, then that's the kind of thing that happens. That tension is built up, and we're seeing it now where, if leadership doesn't find the solutions, and we're not talking about just politicizing stuff, it's like fix it.
Yeah.
Fix the problem. Compromise with Republicans.
Exactly.
Go to the rural states and figure out what they need.
That's
we
right.
need to realize that we are not the only people.
It's so important, and that's what I was just thinking, is this whole idea of sort of superimposing what we think is better.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the mistake that the Peace Corps had made for years and years.
Yes.
Was, hey, we'll go here. Why don't you grow corn instead?
Yeah.
Well, corn doesn't grow here. It's like, who are you? How do you live
colonize,
your life? Yeah.
essentially.
How do you live your life? What's your life like every day?
Yeah.
And what's missing and what do you need?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I can, this whole issue that we're having locally about Prop K, where they close the freeway down along the waterfront to make a park.
Right.
That's a prime example of it affects the people living there differently than it affects the rest of us. Yeah. And I support it. Anytime we can have a park versus another damn highway for cars,
right.
I'm for it. But it messes their lives up.
It's a really, really good example.
It messes up their lives.
Yeah.
And now, London Brie gets voted out.
Right.
I mean, it's not just that issue,
No,
but those are the effects that we have.
So where's the compromise there? See, that's the thing. It's like, can it be a park for part of the day?
Yeah, or half of it. And they were in the process, but it worked to put it on the ballot to help somebody who was running for something else.
Yeah.
And I won't name names.
We won't name names, but and the thing is, that particular part of San Francisco is right along the ocean. For people who don't know, it's beautiful. And people come from all over to be there.
And the shores are crumbling as well. So water rise is going to affect it overhaul anyway.
Right.
It's
So,
not gonna...
so there's that too. But what you're saying is, hey, there's people who live here, and this affects them deeply because they have businesses and they want to get the traffic through so that they can, make money.
And they have parking issues, and they don't want people parking in their neighborhood. I mean, we can diminish those concerns, or we can listen to them. And that's where we have to,
That's
really
the
do
compromise.
think.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think we need to really look at these solutions. I mean, it's tempting. This is the part of the democracy that works in some way. I mean, in many ways, is that we vote on people.
Yeah.
We get to elect our leadership. But part of that process that interrupts governing.
Right.
It does.
It does. A campaign year is like a year without a government in so many
I was
ways.
working on the patrol specials is a private sector policing thing that used to happen where they would be able to coordinate better. They were licensed by the city and therefore could do a little bit more in the public realm to help our officers, so
that
they
sounds
could
really
surveil.
good. Is that
Yes,
not
it was
around
good.
anymore? I'm hearing
It
the
wasn't
past
around.
tense.
It wasn't. What happened was, it was actually before our policing, before we had a police department. That was who enforced our laws. It's in our charter, our
You mean
original
before,
charter.
So before there was a police department,
There
was
were patrol specials,
Yeah.
and it was private sector, paid for by the private sector, but enforcing our city rules.
When was that? What years are we talking?
1850
Oh, long time ago.
to now.
I see.
And it's still part of the charter, but over time, the POA and department didn't like it. I've heard that it took away overtime opportunities, or whatever. Different time now though, because we have fewer than fewer officers than we need. So it really would be helpful to do it.
To get that kind of...
But having the conversation is just, there's so many different interests that you have to negotiate with. And you have to break down those interests and get people to say, look, this would actually solve a problem.
This is the
Let's
thing.
do it.
That's a really good way to say it. Break down the interests.
Yeah.
So that
It's fine to have your interests, but you...
Compromise is where we want to go. So
we have to. We have to do that more.
Wow, you do so much. This is really... No, a painting. I'm glad you're still painting.
I know. Like I said, I have a lot of unfinished work, and it
it
makes me nervous every time I go into my studio.
Well, I want to talk about your paintings now.
Okay.
We're going to end on a happy note. I mean, I think in conclusion, we need to listen more to communities. We need to find out what they need. That's on a local level and a national, and we know global also level. And just keep doing the best we can and not make government too cumbersome.
That's right.
So that was the little that's the blurb that could fit into the square. Let's talk about this first painting here. This is where is this?
This is downtown on I believe it's Main Street, looking up to Telegraph Hill in the late afternoon. I mean, each of our areas of town look totally different depending on what time of day.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of the soft light of morning, as opposed to it gets harsher as it sets on the east. It comes down differently, and it gets a little more yellow.
But again, it's like you can kind of get the feeling that there's movement and people. And I'm going to call Keith and have him bring another painting. Keith,
yeah. Well,
our producer Keith is going to deliver a painting.
So this is all oil on canvas.
Okay.
And then I also do a lot with technology. My background is...
Let's do the one on the right there,
Photoshop.
Keith. That's the technology one.
Yes, the one where I do digital painting, and then we can print it on anything, quite frankly.
And this is, you have this printed on...
Glass.
Yes. You have to squeeze on in a little bit here.
Perfect. I think it's right there.
Good.
And you can... I paint on my iPad... And then I go into Adobe Photoshop, and you can play with resolution, and depending on how big you want it, because I can print this, technically I could print it wall size.
Oh, wow. That's
so
I
did a lot of, I did elevator lobbies at the One Market Google building. Every one of their elevator lobbies has one of my pieces on that was a different neighborhood.
Wow.
So.
Where is that again?
One Market.
Okay,
I think they moved out of that.
Oh,
that was
did.
probably they did a whole. This is something that tech is good with artists. They use artists a lot because we brought in dozens of community artists' work into their building, and they purchased it, so it's in their collections now.
That's so great.
So I did every elevator lobby, all of the walls and ceilings.
What year was that you did that?
2017.
Oh, not that long ago.
Yeah, no, it was
So
a 2 or 3 year project.
Let's
it was a
hope
long
that
project.
they haven't painted over anything.
Yeah, I imagine, because it's on wallpaper, you can print it on stuff. But that's the neat part about technology these days. I like is you can really take advantage of how you do your art and where it goes. So,
So that's one of the good things we can say about technology right now.
Yes,
And you have
absolutely.
another. Can you reach it there?
Yes.
Your third painting.
Should I bring this up here?
Yeah, bring it on up.
And this is is also downtown. I think this is Powell Street, where the cable car runs.
And is this
And
oil?
Sally, was it Sally's Diner was down there? A black and white sign. I can't remember. One of the diners downtown. So this is oil on canvas.
Oh, oil. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Beautiful.
I also brought some things that we did for
Kamala's campaign.
Yeah, the campaign. They initially, when we first moved in, I helped them find their space and get set up, and they definitely wanted artists there. So we did a silk screening, a little silk screening thing where we did T-shirts and because there wasn't a lot of materials that we had in the state because we are in a swing state. So initially they didn't really.
Oh, they had put a
Yeah,
lot
so
of their...
we ended up bringing a silkscreen press in and did
Nice.
this one, and the poster syndicate did. This is Tim Walsh's tater tot recipe.
Dish up some...
Tater tots.
Oh, look at that. Dish
Apparently,
up some democracy.
Walsh was known for tater
For his
tots.
tater tots.
And Marty McKee did a big "We Fight, We Win."
I love the shadows.
Yeah,
That's
poster.
beautiful. Yeah.
This is another poster syndicate of the Blue Wave, Kamala writing the Blue Wave.
I love that too.
But it really was primarily meant to give the volunteers who are doing such hard work support and lift them up, and
Yeah.
they loved it.
Yeah,
So they would
yeah.
come over and help us print.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these worlds, we were thinking about how the policing and the building and the working with people is coming into the conversation. I was thinking such different worlds, but I'm realizing as you were talking about solving the problems that you have
Visually.
to fix in art,
Yeah.
you're solving these problems too. What is it like for you to work so heavily on a campaign or a bunch of campaigns and then have them lose like they have just recently?
I've been in bed since the election. I mean, I've gotten up when I've had to, but it's hard. It's
yeah.
really hard on people. And I went through the same thing in 2016. I spent a lot of time in Nevada, and I was over there on election day, and it was just devastating. I didn't know Hillary nearly as well as I know Kamala. I just had met her, several times on the campaign. But Kamala, I mean, I've known her in her campaigns here and the work she's done when she was the city or the district attorney, and attorney general. I was on the party Democratic caucuses as officer when she was doing the state work. It was devastating, and it's devastating for a lot of people who've worked a lot,
Really
and
hard.
a long time on
Yeah.
politics. I think,
Yeah.
especially my women friends.
Yeah.
I really thought that this was going to be the first time that we'd elected women, and we're not quite over the sexism and racism yet to do that. And I really do feel that that's when you look at how differently the campaigns were accepted or supported.
Right.
That's the only thing that really makes sense, is that at the end of the day, we have a lot of work to do on that.
To be accepting of women and people
Yep.
of color, and when you
Yes.
get the double
and
whammy.
you have somebody now who's going to run the military who doesn't think that women should be in the military. I mean, we cannot go back. And I am with Kamala 1,000,000% when she says that.
Yeah.
We can't go back. And yeah, let's give them a chance to lead and see what they do, but we need to be ready at a moment's notice to make sure that we protect our democracy.
We have to keep our eye on everything. We really
Absolutely.
do. But it goes back to, and I'm not at all refuting what you're saying about racism and sexism, because I know that that's huge in what contributed to her losing. I give her the benefit of the doubt that she wasn't given the opportunity to go through the primary process first. And I knew people who said, well, I didn't pick her as my candidate. So there were a lot of things like that were acting against her as well.
Yep.
And then the overarching feeling of, okay, Democrats, find out what people need. We go back to what we've said this whole time. Find out what they need and see how you can give them and deliver what they need. So,
And people need to move on, and they need to mentor younger leaders.
absolutely.
And I'm older myself. It's not an ageist thing. It's the reality that people want. We need hope. We need to be energized. We need to be lifted up.
Yeah.
And just because you won last time doesn't mean you just have to evaluate stuff. We've had a lot of instances with Feinstein, with Ginsburg, Biden, where we could have done it differently. Mm-hmm. And we maybe could have had a better result had we had more time.
I agree. And I think just what we've been saying, in general, with politics, paying attention. Paying attention. So now we have to pay attention to this administration that's coming in to make sure we maintain the democratic values.
Yep.
And when you're running for office, get these young people in, have them pay attention. What are people asking for?
Yeah. And it really is that, I believe in democracy.
Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes in politics, we just take this stand of I'm right and they're wrong, and I'm often wrong.
That's the yes/no that you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's time that we look at how we're delivering.
Right.
And because otherwise we're just going to go through this. We're going to have every reason for people not to vote for us. So we really need to get results.
Right. And we need to paint beautiful paintings
and I need
to give people.
And hopefully I can finish a lot of the paintings that I've left in my studio.
The artists reflect the world, and it's really important that both of these things are. Both of them are living in you right now.
Yeah.
Art and politics.
Yeah. And we need, we reflect the world, but we also, want to include the ability to lift people up with it.
Yes.
It's for me, doing my art is everything. Hopefully it means something to other people when they look at it.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence that art is what remains of cultures long gone.
Yeah.
It's no coincidence.
Yeah.
It's mostly the art that remains. And, I feel like, not to overstate the importance of art, but we need it.
I don't think you're overstating it.
Yeah.
And especially, given the rest of our conversation about, the heaviness of politics and the heaviness of keeping track of people and how are they and how can we find a home for this person and food for that person and treatment for that person and, farm implements for this guy and, back and forth all over. We need something.
Like Harvey said, you got to give them hope.
Yeah.
You do. And I think that we don't have that from our politicians necessarily.
Yeah.
That's why Obama won, I think, because he
talked about it a lot.
He did that.
He did.
And for some reason, we're not.
And the Yes We Can was a really, really important part of his campaign. So we have to continue to believe that, yes, we can. You and I are old guard. We've been doing this for a long time.
I know.
I want to bring the young ones in to,
That's right.
Yeah, to take up the slack. And I see them doing it. I see more and more of them wanting to be involved. So
people need, if we're going to have commissions, we need good people on them. We need people to work for government. Not just run for office, but actually do the work.
Yeah.
There's almost every city I know is needing to hire people,
Let's bring the young ones in.
Yeah.
Give the young
Absolutely.
energy. Yeah. What a great conversation with you. Thank you so
I've loved it.
much, Debra.
It's been wonderful.
This has been really great. Yeah. Thanks for coming with.
Thank you. I hope I can come back.
Being with all of us today. Yeah.
I want to come back.
Yeah. Well, we're going to watch and see how your art can help influence what's going on in San Francisco. And I know that the politicians are going to keep calling on you, whether you like it or not. You're just going to be in bed and answer the phone. Okay, what do you want?
Or not.
Maybe not a task force, but at least your opinions, because you're seasoned and you've watched and you've listened and you've paid attention for a long time, and that means a lot. So thank you for your work and thanks for being with us.
Thank you for being here.